Well, if you're seeing this vlog, then you're knowing for a fact that that was terrible grammar, and on top of that, that I actually committed to making an episode about nerd culture and a degeneracy problem. And this was a tough video to make on several levels. There are certain things that I cover when it comes to politics, entertainment, and so on and so forth, that when I've covered them, they leave me depressed, drained, and wanting, in some level, to sink back into the nihilistic beliefs that I had when I was a teenager. And I was not a nihilist for long, few years maybe, at best. So there's not really a lot of time to really say that it was, or you would think it would be deeply impactful, but there's something about your teenage years that seem to define you as time goes on. For whatever reason. I don't really understand why. I've been a Christian and, a theist much longer, when you consider that I was baptized when I was 10, and then was a Christian for 4 years, wasn't for 3 years, and then came back to the faith and have been, and now I'm 32. So you wouldn't think that that's what my reaction would be, would be to crawl back into that and those feelings. But then again, nihilism and becoming a nihilist was an emotionally driven decision, and I think that that's probably what I need to consider. Regardless, the reason that I say this is because some of these subjects wear on you, and I think that a lot of people, especially on the internet, are very, very, very unaware of how much they will wear on you. I think that a lot of people out there are not self-aware in a lot of ways. I don't think that they're aware of where their thought processes are going and what their constant self-exposure to pornography, violence, bad news, things that emotionally are not positives, are doing to their psyche over the long run. Which is why I'm very happy that a lot of people on the internet have taken to listening to Dr. Jordan Peterson, because he can really break down what depression does to you, what pornography addiction does to you, and so on and so forth, and help people to understand that and thus better their lives. Some people out there who are apparently well-adjusted will find some of these things obvious. You have to keep something in mind. Most people on the internet are not well-adjusted. I think that was, I remember Mr. Medicare, going off on Jordan Peterson randomly because, I don't know, he makes money. But that was one thing that he said, is like, oh, he's just saying obvious things. Yeah, to a well-adjusted person. But again, most people on the internet are not well-adjusted. The internet is a place where broken people come to try to find themselves, and to find people that are just as broken as they are. And it can be a wonderful thing, and it can be a terrible thing. But people come here to reinvent themselves. I'm not like that. I'm a little different. I didn't come here to reinvent myself. I came here to basically self-medicate, to do something that I found therapeutic. I ended up getting an audience. I ended up finding more of a sense of purpose because people were interested in the work I was doing. So for me, it was something completely different. I was already a known entity on the internet as Micah Curtis. I stayed Micah Curtis, and so on and so forth. And that is my real name, for those of you who are wondering. Anyway, so let's get to the topic at hand. So with the video on degeneracy, I used a strong term, and I used a term that you hear from the alt-right a lot, and I really, part of me wishes I hadn't, because I don't want to be associated with that group of weirdos. And I know that's not an argument. I have I've made enough arguments about the alt-right. I'm done. You know, if you want to hear what I have to say, you can go back and find that shit. Pardon my French, but I really don't care what the alt-right thinks. But the point is that I think degeneracy is a strong term. I plan on doing more videos talking theologically about sin and shame and guilt and things along those lines, and kind of their purpose when it comes to human spirituality and interaction with God, and actually in methods of bettering ourselves. But I wanted to use a strong term like degeneracy that I knew that a lot of people on the internet would say, okay, this is something very wrong is going on, because that's what that word shows, is that there is a regression of someone from civilized to uncivilized. And in the stories that I discuss, and I only briefly I only scrape the surface for the audience, because I want the audience to be more aware of what's going on. I don't want them to feel as if they need to delve deeper, because I delved really enough for them to find out exactly what's going on here. And I found myself questioning something that I hadn't questioned in a long time, and it was sexuality in America. A sexuality, sexualization, and just the American attitude towards sex. And I have my own opinions on this, and I'll share them, but I wanted to get a second opinion and a third opinion. So I've been watching some YouTubers lately, and I don't usually do this. I don't usually go to YouTubers for second or third thoughts, but I did this time. I don't know why. I think because the two individuals their videos I started watching on culture and on the sexual revolution were cultural stuff. I was watching a gentleman named Fritz Imperial, small channel, about 5,000 subscribers, and another one called The Distributist, which a lot of people have recommended me view before, and he did a 4-part series on called The Lies of the Sexual Revolution that are really, really good. And I was watching these, and both of these men are traditionalists, and come across like very intelligent individuals. Type of person I would definitely like to sit down and have a beverage with. And the conclusions that they have come to is that tradition has a purpose, that it is inherently a good thing, especially the Christian tradition, in regards to sexuality, and that a lot of social experimentation with sexuality that we have seen in our society has largely caused problems within society in and of itself, both in how we look at ourselves, how we value ourselves, and so on and so forth. I think that what this also has caused me to do is to kind of realize how lost I was for the longest time. I'm in a weird situation as a man. Over the last decade, from the time I was divorced when I was 22 to this year, where I'm 32, I've had 10 different partners. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I've had 10 different partners since I was sexually active when I was 17. Last woman I slept with was 2.5 years ago. I've been celibate ever since, by choice. Not an easy decision to make, because, and here's sort of the weird spot that being promiscuous or having a sense of promiscuity like I had is that you start to see sex as transactional. You know, it is something, and there were I've only been in about 3 relationships, to be honest with you, dating wise. I was married once over 10 years ago. I had a girlfriend a few years after that divorce, and then I had another one a couple of years after that. Every other woman that I've slept with, it's been a transactional thing. And that is sort of, as I've wandered, I guess you could say, for the last decade, one thing that I've realized is that that's kind of the unfortunate part of where we have taken sex and sexuality, is that it has become so casual, it has become so transactional, that we don't see it as something sacred, that we don't see it as something that is, private, that is something along those lines. And I'm sorry, I couldn't think of any more synonyms, but I've seen this in my own sex life. I think of my 3 serious relationships, I was intimate with 2 of the 3. And both of those women bragged about my performance to coworkers and friends and so on and so forth. And I remember always being incredibly uncomfortable whenever I heard those conversations happen, because I wondered why this was not allowed to be private. I wondered why this was not allowed to be something that was just between the 2 of us. And as time has gone on, as I thought more about this, I've realized what I've done to myself is that, the one-night stands I've had and, friends with benefits, I realized that there is an inherent issue with turning the bedroom into this transactional situation. And that is that you allow an attitude for anything goes to come in. And I didn't even go that far down the rabbit hole. I guess I'm going to have to say this. I've had 1 3-way. No, 2. I had to think about this. The fact that I had to think about it is crazy. I had 2. Me and a friend and a girl, basically. And the whole Eiffel Tower thing. And the other relationships have been monogamous, or just one-on-one sessions, I should say. So I didn't really go that deep down the rabbit hole. I've never been with another man. I've never been with 2 women. Things along those lines. I've never been to like an S&M club. I've never done anything along those lines. But I've gone in just enough to realize that there is something not right here, that there is a lack of fulfillment. That was actually part of the reason that I broke up with my last girlfriend, was because we had sex and everything that led up to it, everything that happened afterwards was nice and lovey-dovey and all that stuff. But the act itself was hollow. It really came across as if we were just there for the orgasm. And that, I'm sorry that I beat around the bush so much here, but that is essentially the transactional element. I think that it was in the movie Don Juan or whatever, Don Juan or whatever, the one that the guy who was in Inception did with Scarlett Johansson and a couple other women, is that you're like masturbating inside someone. And I'm sorry to get so graphic. I know that there's some people who will mind, some people who won't. But the reason that I'm being this graphic is because it's accurate. And that's something that I have a feeling a lot of people are unwilling to really be honest with, or with themselves about, in regards to their sex lives, is that we have reduced this to that. There's something that is often said of, Americans, that we're perfectly fine with somebody getting their head blown off in a film, but nudity is something that we very much frown upon. And part of that is because of how many people within our society are Christians. Now, the problem is that I can understand why people think that that is hypocritical. And I don't think they're 100% wrong. I think that, and I've thought about this a long time, because it's one question that's usually asked to me by atheists that it's not easy to answer, is the simple fact that we as a society have allowed sex to become transactional because of the sexual revolution, because of just general attitude, allowing sex to sell, you know, and us buying it, which that in and of itself is always difficult. And in a weird way, I think that a lot of us are very complicit in it to degrees, and I don't know how we can really get away from it, because what is the line? You know, I was just reading before Hatman and I recorded the Overflow, an old Avengers arc called Ultron Unlimited, which is it's a 4-issue arc where it's what Age of Ultron is based on. The difference in the comic is that Ultron completely slaughters an entire Balkan nation of people, men, women, and children, and turns it into his own nation, basically. And the Scarlet Witch is wearing an outfit within it that could best be described as a belly dancer's outfit. And the Scarlet Witch has always been a curvaceous woman, you know, ample bosom, wide hips, so on and so forth. So so I ask myself, it's like, does that count? Yes or no? You know, I have to question myself quite a bit in that regard. Now, I'm not suggesting that we all go back to burqas, or go to burqas, I should say, or something along those lines, or we all start dressing like what's the denomination I'm thinking of? Pentecostals. Yeah, I'm not saying that we should all do that. What I am saying is that there is a lack of willingness to make a relationship a sacred thing. That's what bothers me. Because we wonder to ourselves why relationships get stale. We wonder to ourselves why so many people cheat, why the divorce rate is so high. And I've come to the conclusion, and this is something that I experienced in my own divorce, is that I've come to the conclusion that we have devalued the institution of marriage to the point where it is something where it's perfectly socially acceptable to have 2 or 3 husbands in your lifetime, or 2 or 3 wives. We treat one another as dispensable. And that bothers me. People should be valued. Value is a good thing to have for other people. Value is a good thing to have in your own life, because you will take care of the things that you value. You know, this is something I have struggled with quite a bit recently. Some of you who are not new will remember a time, and I've only had these for a few months now, where these are all fake. All that top row is fake. All this stuff on the bottom is real. You'll notice one's missing. It's because of neglect. It's because I did not value myself enough to take care of my own body. All I did was value the next tasty thing. And that is oftentimes the issue of anyone else who is big like I am, is you don't value yourself, you value sensation. And I think that that's not just something that I struggle with, but the society in general is struggling with very badly. I have come to this conclusion. I am in a tough spot. The type of woman I am attracted to is not somebody that I'm generally going to find in church. So I wonder where God will take me from here. You know, I like women who are, you know, shorter than me, have short hair, and are, generally very energetic in regards to how they speak and how they act, and are very emotive, which is sort of the counter to me in a lot of ways. And that's not the kind of woman that I've ever seen in a church. A lot of women that I've met in churches tend to be much more reserved, tend to be much more, lie on your back and think of England type. I want a woman who's got a lot of personality, who's got spice to her behavior. So it's difficult for me to find somebody who is like that. And I've sort of had to accept this idea that I need to have faith that where I'm taking my life will be considerably more fulfilling. That's the toughest part about all of this, is we as a society need to be able to do the same thing. But I think that it starts with value. I think that that's where it all begins. We have to realize, if you accept that God is real, which I'm assuming that a good chunk of my audience does, if you assume that God is real, that his eye is on the sparrow and his eye is watching you, basically, that he sees you, he sees all of us, and he sees us as having value, that we must be willing to see one another as having value as well, because we are all God's children. So if that is what we have accepted, if that is the concept that we are going with, we also have to realize that a sexual relationship, a marriage, has value to it on several levels, and is something that should not be sacrificed at the altar of pleasure. And I am so sorry that it has taken me so long to get to this point, but I feel that that's where this problem is, because as people have continuously devalued marriage and devalued relationships between one man and one woman, we have seen more sexual experimentation. We have seen this free love and people who practice it open for all sorts of relationships that are debaucherous, that really don't give you any long-term fulfillment. Polyamorous relationships. There are people who are believers in free love. The distributors pointed this out. This is something I pointed out in my video. This is something Aidan Paladin pointed out when she was looking at the sexual philosophies of the Marxists that inspired Antifa, is that there are some that advocate for pedophilia as a positive. And I have no reason to think that this isn't because people with this free love, free sex idea were unwilling to draw a line and say, this is where it ends. And that is why one of the many reasons I find inherent value within my belief in God is that it draws a line. It draws a line and gives a very, very strict moral standing on everything, that you're going to encounter in regards to your own life. And that is hard to live by, and it has been very difficult for me to live by these past few years. It is, it's one reason why I don't talk to a lot of women. It's one reason that I am not incredibly social. I have to relearn how to do this whole process, because over the last 10 years, I've been a lech. And I hate that part of myself. And now I hate it enough to where I'm going to try to change. And I will change. It's going to take time, though. But I want to, at some point, be willing or be able to look at women and say that's somebody's daughter. And that's an ability that I haven't had in a long time, that I have to find again. And it will not be easy, but I think that that is step one. And I'm hoping that more people will be willing to take that. All right. I think I'm going to stop it there. I don't really think I have anything to add. My heart is broken because of what I have done to myself and what I see people do to each other. My name is Micah Curtis. I'll see you next time. Dave's Fault.